I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll say.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 5, public comment period. Period open to the public. If there's anybody here that would like to speak on an item that's not on the agenda, now would be the time to do so. Item number 6, new business. Do we have any new business for consideration?
We do.
Okay, thank you. Item number 7, consent calendar.
I'll move on the consent calendar. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 8, items for consideration and possible action. Item 8A1, water rates and capacity fees committee. Gary?
Yes, Dwayne, you want to comment on that? Sure, I'd be happy to, in fact, Matt Knudsen provided this. What, I can't think of it. Adjusted. So, board members, Matt Knudsen will provide the staff report. This is our annual contract with Reptiles Corporation for helping us with our water rate setting and our financial planning.
All right. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. Included in your board packet is a staff report and a proposal received from Reptiles Financial Consultants. About a week ago, the Water Rates and Capacity Fees Committee met and reviewed the proposal included in the packet. As you know, we've been working with Reptiles for a number of years now on updating the agency's water rates on an annual basis. As part of their proposal, they also provided a 5-year financial plan. So we're always looking out 5 years ahead from a financial planning standpoint. And that information is then used to recommend to the full board what the following year's water rate should be. This proposal does just what we've done the last several years, but it also expands the scope of Reptiles Financial Consultants to include updating the agency's capacity and water supply charges. Those capacity charges haven't been updated since 2007 for the agency. So it would be good to review based on the improvements that are recommended out of our water system master plan to ensure that we're updating those capacity fees to meet today's costs. As you know, those capacity fees are paid by any new development that comes within the agency that hooks up to one of our retail agency or customers. They have to pay a capacity fee to the agency based on the meter size and the capacity of that meter. This proposal also includes Reptiles to evaluate various alternatives to our water rate structure. As you know, over the last couple of years, we've had discussions on looking at different ways to ensure that our customers are being as accurate as they can be with future orders from the agency on water supply. That helps us from a water supply management standpoint to ensure that we're doing everything we can to meet their needs, but we aren't tying up water supply that's not being utilized by those customers. So with that, I think I have to report that the Water Rates and Capacity Fees Committee and staff are recommending that we proceed with this proposal in a not to exceed amount of $62,270 and authorize the general manager to execute our standard professional services agreement for same.
I move on the board order 8-1.
I'll say.
Any discussion?
Yes. It just dawned on me when we were saying this. Regarding the couple things. Like you said, it's been how many years?
Well, it's been 12 years since we updated the capacity fees.
Yeah, that has to, we need to, that needs to be looked at because it caught us in the mind 15 years ago where we didn't do it. It was during the recession, maybe it was 18 years ago, the recession, And after the report came in, it showed that we were taking money from the existing funds instead of the new funds to expand. And one of the reasons why that capacity charge was put in place was sponsored by the building industry of California. It was, if I recall, it was Newt Russell and I think Wyman were the two sponsors on that bill to do that. And it was I think it was 1991.
Right in that.
1991. And one of the things I've always been an advocate of is that the new growth pays the way. You know, people that are retired, people that have been here, should not be paying for the new growth. I don't think that's fair for them. And the second thing is we got some big projects on the horizon. We know they're coming. We got to make sure that there's enough funds coming from there to build the remainder of the SNP line. If we don't get the grant money, we got to have that money available to make that whole system complete. So we need to do that. I mean, as much as like anybody else, I don't want to raise anything, but 12 years without raising something usually gets you into trouble. The second thing I asked them to look at was the cost of living index. We're using the downtown LA cost of living in Long Beach to make decisions here in the Antelope Valley, which I know that the cost of living is about 40–50% less, and you know, when they use those costs. So I asked them to see if they can, if there's a way to look at the cost of living here in the Antelope Valley is more compatible to Riverside or whatever it is, instead of downtown Los Angeles and Long Beach, and raising that cost. So, but if that's what it comes out to be, then of course I will support that, but I just want to make sure they're looking at that.
Yeah, and that'll be part of the evaluation that we work through with draft dollars.
Okay.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
All right, thank you.
Item number 8A2, consideration and possible action on setting water rates public hearing. Gary?
Yeah, same thing, Dwayne.
Sure, be happy to provide some information. The Avek Act requires that the agency provide a 45-day notice of a public hearing prior to conducting that public hearing. What we're asking for is that the board authorize the public hearing to be notified and set for 10/22/19. So that'd be October 22nd. Should give us sufficient time to provide the required 45-day notice, consistent with the consultant's work that will be accomplished during that period of time.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move on to order A2 to set the date.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 9, old business. Looks like we don't have any, correct?
Correct.
So on to number 10, general manager's report.
Yes, before I give my general manager's report, we have a presentation for the board on the California water plan update. This is a plan update that's done approximately every 5 years. Provides an overview of the state of California's strategic goals and objectives. And Jordan Ray of our staff will provide that staff report for you in the presentation.
Good evening. Okay, tonight I'm going to give you an overview of the California Water Plan Update 2018. It was just released to public in mid-July. So the California Water Plan is the state's strategic plan for sustainably managing and developing water resources for current and future generations. It's required by California Water Code, Section 10005A. The Department of Water Resources is responsible for updating the plan every 5 years, and Update 2018 is the 12th in a series of such plans since 1957. Okay, so Update 2018 begins by describing the state of water in California today. It then addresses the challenges we face while working towards sustainability. The plan then lays out 6 goals for sustainability and recommended actions for each goal. It lists a few new innovations and methods developed specifically to aid in implementing these recommendations. And then at the end of the presentation, I'm going to go over a few things that Avek is doing and how it relates to the plan. So this figure on the right, it's a visual representation of the overall goal of Update 2018. It's referred to as the flower of sustainability, and it's believed that the more that your water management projects are towards the center, that the greater the sustainability will be, and it'll have greater benefits. All right, California water today. So many of the state's network of water storage and conveyance systems reflect World War II era investments and were not designed to meet today's environmental requirements or California's current values and evolving needs. Since Update 2013, California has endured a multi-year drought that threatened water supplies of communities, decreased agricultural production, worsened groundwater overdrafts, and harmed ecosystems. The drought was ended by record-breaking rainfall that underscored the vulnerability of California's aging flood and water management infrastructure and fragile ecosystems. So this graphic at the bottom, it's a timeline of historic flood events and historic periods of drought. So the blue is flooding and the brown is drought. And this graphic also underscores the unpredictability of weather events. Challenges to sustainability. Listed below are challenges Californians face while working towards sustainability. They're divided into 2 categories, critical and systemic and institutional. Critical challenges are ongoing or imminent problems. They include more extreme hydrologic events, increasing flooding, declining groundwater levels, lower water quality, aging infrastructure, wildfires, climate change, and changing demands for water. Systemic and institutional challenges result from outdated, ineffective, or inflexible statutes, policies, or practices that increase the time, effort, or cost to mitigate adverse effects of critical challenges. These include fragmented and non-coordinated initiatives and governance, inconsistent and conflicting regulations, insufficient capacity for data-driven decision-making, and inadequate performance tracking of state and local investment. So, in order to deal with these challenges, Update 2018 provides 6 goals for sustainability. Recommended actions are provided along with each of these goals to help achieve each one. The goals are improve integrated watershed management, strengthen resiliency and operational flexibility and existing future infrastructure, restore critical ecosystem functions, empower California's underrepresented or vulnerable communities, improve interagency alignment and address persistent regulatory challenges, and lastly, support real-time decision-making, adaptive management, and long-term planning. So goal number 1 is improve integrated watershed management. Action 1 is strengthen state support for integrated regional water management in vulnerable communities. Action 2, support the role of working landscapes. Working landscapes include forests, wetlands, farmland, water bodies, and other natural resource lands that are both public and private. Action 3, promote flood-managed aquifer recharge, known as flood-MAR, and sustainable groundwater management practices. Flood-MAR is a management strategy that uses floodwater resulting from or in anticipation of rainfall or snowmelt. Goal number 2, strengthen resiliency and operational flexibility of existing and future infrastructure. This goal's pretty upfront. There's only one recommendation for it, which includes continuing upon the efforts to improve infrastructure and assisting local agencies. Goal number 3, restore critical ecosystem functions. Action 3.1, address legacy impacts. Legacy impacts are negative environmental changes resulting from human disturbance. Action 2, facilitate multi-benefit water management practices. This goes back to the sustainability graphic in the beginning of the presentation. And action 3.3, quantify natural capital. Quantifying the social and economic values of functional ecosystems will assist with measurement of progress towards restoration goals. Goal number 4, empower California's underrepresented or vulnerable communities. Action 4.1, expand tribal involvement in regional planning efforts. And action 4.2, engage proactively with disadvantaged community liaisons. Goal number 5 is improve agency alignment and address persistent regulatory challenges. This goal relates to some of the systemic challenges listed earlier. Action 5.1, incorporate ecosystem needs into water management infrastructure planning and implementation. Action 2, streamline ecosystem restoration project permitting. And action 3, address regulatory challenges. And then lastly, goal 6, support real-time decision-making, adaptive management, and long-term planning. This is where some of the innovations developed for the plan come into play. So action 6.1, facilitate comprehensive water resource data collection and management. 6.2, coordinate climate science and monitoring efforts. Action 6.3, improve performance tracking. DWR will assess the state's progress towards update 2018 goals by applying the sustainability outlook, which I will describe further in the following slide. Action 6.4, develop regional water management atlas. I'll also go into this more in detail in the next slide. Action 6.5, report on outcomes of projects receiving state financial assistance. Action 6, expand water resource education. And action 7, explore ways to develop stable and sufficient funding. So, update 2018 innovations. So here are the 2 main innovations that came out of the update. The first is the Regional Water Management Atlas. It's a new interactive statewide planning and data synthesis tool. It's available online, and it provides users with access to critical water management data, including needed, ongoing, and completed water resource management projects. It will provide a platform for building partnerships that allows for multi-sector collaboration and multi-benefit projects. The second item, the Sustainability Outlook, is a method used to inform the planning and prioritization of water management actions. The graphic to the right is a visual representation of the outlook. This method or tool involves tracking results of water management actions and evaluating whether these results are consistent with the intended outcome. It allows for adaptation and continued evolving of plans in order to achieve the anticipated goal. So, update 2018 Avek. Here are some things that we're working on that relate to the plan. Water banking, this is similar to FloodMar. The water banks will provide additional storage capacity to increase resiliency during drought years and improve water quality. Infrastructure improvements, looking at potential new funding mechanisms for infrastructure projects such as SNP Phase 2 that close gaps, enhance operational flexibility, and increase resiliency. We could also explore potential new resources to better engage with and serve vulnerable or disadvantaged communities in Avek's service area. Data-driven decision-making. So we have been and are continuing updating our technology to help us work more efficiently and effectively. Continuous innovation and improvement in data collection improves integrated regional water management, interagency alignment, and long-range planning. One of the things that the state wants to do that may affect us is ecosystem restoration, so this could further limit flows out of the delta. Questions? And then the link on the bottom, that's to the Regional Water Management Atlas. It's a pretty cool tool. I did a webinar and people wanted to know more about that, like how to use it. Pretty cool if you guys want to check it out.
So I have a question. In their plan, they have these actions. Do they have what they're gonna do to implement these actions?
No, it's kind of a broad, suggestions. They have the goal, and then the actions are kind of what you can do to help you achieve the goal, but there's not really specifics.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, great. Did a great job. Appreciate it.
It's interesting, as you begin to learn more and more about the state system and its decision-making processes and the challenges and the problems. We like to use the word challenges, not problems, but they really are problems that we face in meeting our water needs over the next 20 to 50 years. It's remarkable how much all of these people and all of these agencies really don't know what to do. They don't really have an idea of what really is going to work or not. So there's been a healthy recognition, especially when it comes to many of the flow issues, is to use adaptive management. In other words, to try things, see how they work, and if they work well, to continue them. If they don't, then learn from that and not do that anymore. Because it is a system that nobody has, the plan to go from point A to point B to get a solution. They're working at it as they go through.
Is this part of these 1,100 divisions we have in California that we're just wasting money on?
Well, I
don't
guess
get a
that's
comment on that, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I mean, when you just said one doesn't know what the other one's doing, I mean, why don't we have these people employed for? It's crazy.
So, what this plan and others are trying to do is to get this all moving in one direction, and this is kind of the start. So,
I think we're way ahead of them.
well, there's no doubt that the more local you get, the more results-oriented development that you get. There's no doubt about that. The smaller the agency, the more you get to the results much more. Anyway, here's the General Manager's Report for August 13, 2019. As you can see, our state weather for our Feather River region, it's sunny and clear as we would anticipate during the summertime, and snow levels are above 12,000 feet. You can see here from the graphic here that that our rainfall totals are in this particular area are very low, as we would anticipate over the next 3 months before they begin to crop up again in October. I'll have to turn it off this time. All right. So here's our chart for our precipitation. You can see we had this little bump up here during this period, and it has been flat ever since. This is the average precipitation, so we're one of the third or fourth highest as far as precipitation goes. But it's been a very good year as far as snow goes, and all the snow's gone, and so we have no relative snow that's left. What it's resulted in is that all these reservoirs that represent the state here are all in very full conditions. You can see that we're currently 118% in Lake Orville and 138% here in San Luis Reservoir. So this makes for a good start for the new water year with full reservoirs to begin with. This gives you a little more detail with regards to the current conditions. Once again, we're way up here, so we're very high on the Orville Reservoir area. Same conditions here, 138% percent of average. There was some fear of spill if this wasn't brought down a little bit over the course of the next through the balance of the year. That's subsided substantially, so we're in pretty good shape, at least until the rainy season begins. Looking more locally, you can see our water treatment plant flows are at 159.3 million gallons a day. This is a little less than half of our total capacity, but it is at a peak period for us during the summertime period. Our geopurification, which is water we receive from the groundwater banks, at 5.4 million gallons a day. From our water banking, we are considering, because of the wet year, we are banking a considerable amount of water, close to 178 feet a day from the west side water bank and 5.2 acre feet on the east side. So we are moving, and we'll continue that through pretty much the balance of the year. Good news also is that our water quality has been exceptional this particular year. We're well below our internal goals of 64 micrograms per liter, and well above, or well, I should say, well below the 80 milligrams per liter that is the state standard. A great indication of how well our water quality is that the bromate is near non-detect in our clear wells. Give you a little legislative updates here. You can see we're at about 8:12. The legislators reconvened. They have the last days for fiscal committees is the end of the month to report on bills. We got some floor sessions, last day to amend on the floor, and then 9/13, the last day for the bill to be passed before they are recessed, and then the governor has to 10/13 to sign or veto all the bills passed by the legislation. So that's where we are as far as the legislative schedule for the next month. A couple of bills that we've been tracking and have briefed you on previously. Senate 1. This is the California Environmental Public Health and Workers Defense Act of 2019. It's maybe referred to the Senate Assembly Appropriations Committee to the suspense file that's taken up on August 29th and 30th. The reason why this bill is of particular interest to all of the state contractors and Avek is that if this bill was to be approved as it is currently written, if it's not amended, the bill would undermine the efforts of the voluntary agreements. What that means is that if the voluntary agreements aren't able to be authorized for approval, then there will be a considerable amount of additional water that will be let out to the ocean in order to meet the fish and wildlife requirements. So that's why that's such an important item, because voluntary agreements include all of the watershed participants, not just the state water contractors. So it helps, while the amount of water is the same, the difference is it's not all coming from the state water project. Also, AB 1580 is the major infrastructure construction projects oversight committee. This would require any state agency undertaking any public construction over $1 billion form an oversight committee for critical decisions. And this definitely is targeted for the Delta Conveyance Project, and the state water contractors have sent a letter in opposition for that. Because it would just add another series of bureaucracy onto a very bureaucratic process as it already exists. As far as schedule and events, Urban Water Institute is Wednesday through Friday of this week. Also, we have a special board meeting on August the 20th it's a budget workshop. We have a tentative legislative trip up to Sacramento on the 26th. and the water master meeting Wednesday, August 28th. With the exception of some of these trips, I plan to be in the office as much as possible. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, item number 11, committee meeting recap report for informational purposes only.
Yes. We have one presentation. This is from Townsend Public Affairs. We'll start out with him. We have Jonathan Jackson and Corey Williams from Townsend Public Affairs. Give the board an outline of the recent legislative trip to Washington, D.C.
Thank you. I'm Corey Williams, Senior Director of Townsend Public Affairs. I did let your main point of contact, Eric Madonna, leave the country to go on vacation this week. So today you have myself and my colleague Jonathan Jackson, who's straight off the airplane from our Washington, D.C. office to give you an update on our trip a couple weeks ago, what we've been working on since then, and where we see ourselves heading over the next few weeks. So I'm going to hand it off to Jonathan.
Good evening. Good evening. As Corey said, my name is Jonathan Jackson. I am Senior Associate in the Washington, D.C. office. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I just want to let you guys know about what we worked on last week, what we're last month with our advocacy trip and what we're currently working on since that time. So without further ado, we'll get right into it. Just make sure this works. Okay, so background, the advocacy trip took place July 16th and 17th last month. We met with 8 congressional members and senior level staff. What is not, or the 2 members that are not included in this 8 are 2 members that our President Christopher Townsend met with. That is Congressman Salute Carbajal, and that's also Ken Calvert. Congressman Carbajal is on the T&I Committee, Transportation and Infrastructure Committee in the House, and Calvert is on the Water Subcommittee for the Appropriations Committee. In addition to the congressional offices, we also met with 2 federal agencies, that's the U.S. Economic Development Administration, as well as the Department of Interior's Bureau of Reclamation. And we thought that these 2 were critical, as these are the 2 agencies that focus a lot of their funding towards water issues and water allocations. So we thought it was critical for us to meet with the 2 of these agencies. Last but not least, we met with the White House National Economic Council, and the NEC is responsible for coordinating domestic policy issues to the President. And so we felt that the White House should be aware of Avek and this project, as it is a critical project for the Southern California region. So we thought that they should be aware of that. Next, we have the meeting highlights. So we spent some time working on a few ideas for legislative or funding opportunities that we compiled prior to this trip. And so the objective with those was to determine whether or not they were viable and to kind of further flesh them out when we had these meetings. And so we have 4 here. First is the Water Resources Development Act. Legal or legislative arenas, it's called WRDA. And so this is the congressional allocation of funding. And we have 2 sections or 2 ideas that we were able to determine as options under WRDA. First is section 5039 of WRDA 2007, and that allocates $40 million in appropriations for water projects in California. Second section.
Jonathan, can I just interject here so that the board knows what project we were actually working on? We were looking at giving funds for the SNP line.
Yes, this is for $26 million in appropriation for the projects. Pardon me for not explaining that. So, the second option, can you hear me? just making sure. Second option is the section 7001 awarded 2014. And so that is a list that the Army Corps of Engineers sends to Congress. It is a list of pre-approved projects that they kind of deem as high priority. And so they send this list to Congress asking for an increase in funding. So we thought that would be another viable option. Next, we have the WaterSmart Title 16 Water Reclamation and Reuse Program. And this is a program that provides funding opportunities for reclamation and reuse water programs, or water projects, excuse me. And they are funded up to a maximum of $20 million. Third is the Wind Act storage funding. And this is allocation of about $335 million that Congress authorizes for storage projects, above ground and below ground storage projects. Lastly, we have the DoD MILCON funding. MILCON stands for military construction, and this funds projects that are relevant to DoD and kind of armed services, military components. So anything that deals with or kind of assists with military strategy and military construction. Next slide is the follow-up action items. And so this is basically what we kind of took away from our meetings with the 8 members of Congress, as well as the agencies in the White House when we met. And so the first is the word up. We reviewed what we learned of the Army Corps work plan. And the Army Corps work plan basically details water funding, water funding. Water funding is allocated, like I said, from Congress to the Army Corps of Engineers. The Army Corps of Engineers then list of projects, and they send them back to Congress for approval, for appropriations approval. The second, WaterSmart Title 16. Here, the first thing that we learned is that we needed to confirm eligibility for this program. The second was to determine the federal cost share match. And so that is 25% match or it's a configuration that includes 25% funding from the federal government. Similar to the water program, Title 16, the WIN Act, we also had to figure out what we could do as far as eligibility, if we would be able to qualify under the storage component of the WIN Act, and also the same thing apply with the federal cost share match. Last is the DoD MILCON funding. And so this is $3.6 billion in unobligated military construction project funds. And so we got to figure out whether or not this is something that is viable for the Senate Phase 2 project. Oh.
If I could chime in on that, you see the language about the cost share match. I just want to expand on that a little bit. The way that both the Title 16 and Wind Storage Act funding programs work is that 75% of the cost share is on the applicant, the public agency, and the federal government will pick up 25% of the cost share. So as we're looking at your project and we're understanding your desires to have as much grant funding as you 100% grant funding, one of the things we want to explore in Washington D.C. is can we leverage phase 1 of your investment and use that towards the match. If we can do that, then the 75-25 breakdown works great, and we can apply for all 26 million of phase 2 to be funded by the federal government. But the way that these grant guidelines are written, it's not clear. So we wanted to explore that further with the congressional members and with the agencies.
So have you done that?
We have, and we'll get to that when we get to next steps.
So, brings us to the status updates. So, with water, we have contacted Army Corps of Engineers to discuss the operations and maintenance sections of the work plan that they produced to Congress. I've gone through and reviewed that, and it seems that there are numerous projects that are similar to the Senate Phase 2 project included in these sections of that report or that plan. So we think that that's an opportunity that we can basically utilize. We also contacted Congresswoman Napolitano's office, and we're going to be speaking with them about WERDA. It is coming up in 2020 for the reauthorization, so we'd like to kind of get a head start on that, because it'll be September of next year.
So that means that the funds are used for now, and so we need to get on the list for the next year?
Well, yeah, so they're already working on what is going to be, well, it has not been produced yet, so Congresswoman Napolitano will eventually create this bill, this legislation that allocates the funding for water resources and water projects, and so this will be kind of forthcoming. From what I've understood, this is something that they would like to introduce before the end of the year. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. Congress can make a decision to turn and focus on something else. But the authorization, the deadline to reauthorize is September 30th of 2020. And so what you have to do is get new authorization before that, or in essence, you'll have what is similar to like the government shutdown. If you don't fund the government, you know, the government shuts down. So allocations will run out on the 30th of September next year.
What about the allocations for this year?
For this year, that was
For September of 2019.
Right, so that was in the previous water bill, so that was 2016, yeah, it was 16, so it's usually about a 2 to 3 year authorization.
Okay.
So they do it every 2 to 3 years.
I have a question. You know, after listening to your report and following this, I don't understand why this is not an urgency bill or a directive. Do you understand this pipeline? You probably don't. This pipeline is going to serve a lot of Edwards Air Force Base. The biggest military project in the world is being built in Palmdale.
Right.
But the test flights, which very few people know, they're building mega buildings on Edwards Air Force Base to test the B-21 bomber. Okay.
We communicated that to each office.
Yeah,
just so you know,
but
we did.
I think Kevin McCartney is the, I think he's the chairman of the.
He's the Republican leader.
No, but I think he's also in charge of the.
Not anymore.
Not anymore?
No, he's not, now that he's chairman.
Okay, yeah, I think there's a disconnect here. We need this thing, this pipeline to get the water for Edwards, because right now they're depending primarily on our water because of the quality water they get from their wells over there. We just went through a full report you saw about the overdrafting of groundwater basin, and if that pipeline's in, it will serve 100% of their water pretty much any given day. It's also important because by that pipe being in, we can utilize the water, treat it at a Quartz Hill plant, and service Edwards Air Force Base right out of this plant. So without that connection, we can't do that if there's ever a catastrophe and somebody's going to be short of water, and I don't think they want to be what they're doing in Jersey right now, passing out, bottled water. So I mean, all I'm saying is there's plenty of money. I know there's plenty of money. It's just that it seemed like something is not connecting the pieces. I don't know what it is.
Oh, the SNP line too.
Huh?
Oh, the SNP line too.
Yeah, SNP line too. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know why we can't. And we got. I mean, Katie's here. She's new in charge. And I understand that she's the new one in the bunch. But Kevin needs to be more aggressive. Somehow get his office more aggressive in getting this appropriated somehow, so we can get it, so we can start building it next year. And it's going to take us 2-3 years to get the thing in anyway. So,
well, we understand the importance of this. Everybody is aware of that. Which is why we've been working so diligently to make sure that we can figure out how to get that funding for you. And that's one of the reasons why we looked at the MILCON funding, because I was like, well, we have the Air Force Base, that's the connection there. So a lot of times, it's the difference, and it's just kind of the gridlock that just continues to permeate Washington, D.C., unfortunately, in Congress. I mean, here in the state, it's just, you can kind of include a lot more projects and things can kind of just get streamlined a lot faster. That's not the case in Washington, D.C. I 100% agree with you. There is disconnect there, and we have to figure that out. We've been in contact with the Minority Leader's office, Kevin McCarthy, and we have been working with Kyle Lombardi, his legislative director. So I've been personally contacting him myself to make sure that they understand the urgency. And that's part of the reason why we also met with the White House National Economic Council, because of the connection with President Trump and Congressman McCarthy. And so we tried to make sure that the NEC knew that this was something that was critical, so that it can kind of urge Congressman McCarthy to kind of make this a priority. So we're working this from multiple angles. We completely understand that this is necessary, it's needed. Let's see, I was on, oh yes, Water Smart, Title 16, the Reclamation and Reuse Program. We here contacted Congresswoman Katie Hill's office about working with the Bureau of Reclamation to see if SNP is eligible for Title 16 funding as a reuse and reclamation project.
Even though it's not in particular.
Right, but it's all about how we kind of word it, and so we're working with one of the contacts that we had learned from, learned of when we had the meeting with the commissioner at the BOR, named Avek Morgan. And so we're working with Katie Hill's office. We felt that what would kind of have more of a punch, you know, if you will, so to speak, is to have a member of Congress reaching out to the BOR, because BOR is responsible, or they must respond to questions and inquiry, if you will. Next we have the WINAC storage funding. I personally contacted the ENR, so that's Energy and Natural Resources Subcommittee, Water Subcommittee Chair, Senator McSally. She recently had a hearing, and the committee made the decision to revamp a couple of the bills, water-related bills that are in the Senate right now. One of those in particular is the drop bill from Senator Feinstein. And so they're hoping to reintroduce these bills in committee in September. And so I've been working with that office to kind of understand and make sure that our concerns are considered in those bills. I also found out in that meeting about Senator Tom Harper and Senator Udall. They all also have bills that they're going to be working on and looking to introduce. So I'll be meeting with them as well. So we're kind of attacking this from every angle, no stone unturned, if you will. Speaking of bills, there's a bill that Congressman T.J. Cox has. He's looking to introduce. I've been working with his office to incorporate language into his water-related bill that will make, you know, the likelihood of projects like SNP more viable for funding. And so we've been working with his office to get this bill off the ground. Lastly, like I stated before, we worked with Congresswoman Katie Hill's office also to find out about eligibility for the WIN in addition to Title 16. Last is DOD MILCON funding, military construction funding. And so there's $3.6 billion in unobligated funds for military projects, and we're trying to find out if that's viable. That's something that we can utilize and how we can obtain that funding. So that's something else that we're working with through the Army Corps of Engineers.
How are you working with them to find that out?
I was going to get to that in my next slide, so that's at the next steps. So next steps. So first and foremost, the Army Corps of Engineers, we scheduled a meeting on the 28th to discuss some of the military parameters around our opportunities in funding, such as the MILCON funds and where, since they oversee all of this. So we'll be discussing all of that. I've reached out to a contact and we'll be addressing all of those opportunities for funding. In addition to that, as I previously stated, we'll be working with Congresswoman Katie Hill's office and Avek Morgan. we've been working to let Congresswoman Katie Hill know that the BOR is a critical agency that we need to utilize and find out as much as we can from them. So we're working to get that meeting scheduled over the next 2 weeks or so. In addition to that, as I stated, Congresswoman Napolitano, we're meeting with Joe in her office, that's her LD. We met with him when we were in Washington, D.C., so we'll be talking about Word of 2020 next week. Last but not least, the next thing is the Congressman T.J. Cox bill. And so this bill is very, very important because I think that it includes storage, a storage component, and an increase in storage project funding. So it was somewhere around like $300 and some odd million for storage funding. Congressman Cox's bill doubles that. So that's something that we could utilize, and so I think that that is very, very, very important. And so I'd like to provide a letter of support from Avek. I'm happy to get that to you guys shortly. That letter would basically support that bill, saying that this is something that we could utilize and it would benefit Avek and offer the opportunity to get funding for the Senate Phase 2 project. Part of that is also co-sponsorship, and that's something that I've been working on. So, anything that you want to move through Congress, it requires co-sponsorship to be taken seriously. And so I kind of mentioned some of that, the drag in Congress. You can cut into that if you have a few members on bills that are supporting this. So I've been working, my whole office, Congresswoman Bernice Johnson, she is big on water and water reuse projects, because Texas is a water reuse project. So she's third in line in seniority on the T&I committee, transportation committee. So we'll be working with them. She's interested in co-sponsoring. There's a couple of other members, Johnny Armendi. We're also going to be talking to Congressman Carter Paul's office, and then a few of the congressmen from New Mexico. So this is a very, very, very important bill, and I think this is a great opportunity for us to find some funding, a real tangible opportunity. Last but not least, as I stated, I'll be working with Senator Harper and Senator Udall's office to figure out what their bills are in the Senate and see what we can do to make sure that our thoughts are included and our concerns are included in those bills as well. Any questions?
Yes, you didn't address in regards to SNP Phase 1 being acceptable towards the 75% for the funding.
Yes, and so that's what we're going to be discussing with Albert Morgan with the Bureau of Reclamation, because we have to determine whether or not it is it can be included towards the cost, the federal cost share.
So when's that going to take place? Because it's been a month.
Next week. So
It's
to
next
answer your
week.
question, we don't have
Okay.
an answer yet. We've been trying to identify the right people who can answer that question.
Mhm.
Albert Morgan is that person. We have a meeting on the calendar August 28th.
Okay, good. I look forward to hearing the outcome of that.
We'll make sure you follow up on that.
I have a question.
Sure.
Jonathan, did you say that there are approximately $3.6 billion in unobligated NILCON funding that might be available?
Yes, so if you guys remember, earlier in the year, the president was considering using this funding to increase the border wall funding. I don't know if you remember that. And so that's where that money was coming from. It's unobligated. It has not been allocated through the work plan and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So the key is to find out if that's something that can be used for a project like SNP Phase 2.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to make a comment. I think Kevin's pretty close to the president. I think he should be able to get $25 million out of that money. That's like $10 anywhere else out of $3.5 million. So somebody should maybe contact his office, and maybe that's the angle we need to go after that, unsecured money that's out there.
We'll follow up with them. We also learned in the meetings that there's been a previous partnership between the city of Clovis and Cannon Air Force Base on an infrastructure project. So we're trying to figure out more about what that was, because there may be a precedent there that gives legitimacy to us going in and asking for this funding out of that 3.6 billion.
McCarthy can also go to the president and put it in the president's budget. And that's what I asked him to do.
He's a lot closer to him than I am, so I think he should do that.
I do too.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for working diligently on this for us.
Our pleasure.
Okay, item 11B, Water Bank Resource and Negotiation Meeting.
This is a negotiating meeting that was held on July 30th, 2019. At that committee meeting, the committee discussed several table A water sales proposals and a exchange with Santa Clara. Direction was received from the committee to staff and the follow-up to that. That's conclusive.
Thank you. Item 12, any director reports?
No report.
No reports? Okay. 13, attorney's report.
Nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. Item 14, closed session. Do we have a reason to go into closed session?
Yes, we do. Item D and E.
Okay, can I have a motion to go into closed session?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll go into closed